Bills Mafia. The news coming out of One Bills Drive right now is the kind that requires you to sit down, take a breath, and look at the full picture before you react. Because on the surface, some of what has been happening around this roster in the days since mandatory minicamp wrapped up looks like setback. A young cornerback lost for the season, roster moves being made at the margins, questions about depth at critical positions. But underneath all of that surface-level turbulence, the foundation of this franchise has never been more solid. And two potential roster additions are being discussed right now that could transform this offense and this defense in ways that make every legitimate Super Bowl contender in the AFC very nervous. Let us break down every piece of it right now because this story has layers that deserve full examination. Start with the bad news, because it is real and it deserves to be acknowledged directly. Dorian Strong is done for the 2026 season. The sixth-round cornerback the Bills selected in last year's draft had neck surgery in early February after playing just 4 games in his rookie year. And the organization has now been informed that his recovery will keep him sidelined for the entirety of this season. The plan is to keep him on injured reserve unless another team claims him off waivers. That outcome is genuinely disappointing for a player who showed real promise in very limited opportunity, getting targeted 6 times and allowing 4 receptions for 61 yards in the games he played before the injury ended his year. Strong entered the league with coverage instincts and size that made him an intriguing developmental piece in a secondary that needed depth. Now that developmental timeline has been pushed back by a full year, and the Bills enter training camp with 1 fewer body in a cornerback room that was already operating without the kind of veteran depth that championship teams typically carry. The question his absence immediately raises is whether this creates enough urgency to bring Tre'Davious White back. And the argument for that reunion is stronger than it has been at any point this offseason. White is 31 years old, which is a number that sounds concerning until you actually look at what he did last season. He returned to the Bills on a 1-year deal, started 16 games, led the Buffalo defense with 10 pass breakups, and added an interception. For a cornerback in the later stages of his career, those are not the numbers of a player who is done contributing at a high level. They are the numbers of an experienced, smart, technique-driven corner who understands how to play within a scheme and make plays on the ball without relying exclusively on the athleticism that diminishes naturally with age. White's football IQ has always been his greatest asset, and football IQ does not decline with age the way explosiveness does. White also knows this organization. He knows the culture. He knows the defensive system. He knows the secondary's communication patterns and the coverage calls that the team has been running for years. In a group that is integrating a new defensive coordinator in Bobby Babich, a new scheme, and multiple young players who are learning on the job, having a veteran cornerback who can communicate correctly and anchor the unit without any adjustment period is enormously valuable. The new Bills defensive scheme should allow White to have more success because he will not be asked to play as much press coverage, and instead can leverage his instincts and his understanding of route concepts to make plays in the zone heavy looks Babich prefers. If the price is reasonable and the physical evaluation comes back clean. Bringing White back is the most efficient and lowest risk solution to the depth problem Strong's absence created. The young cornerback additions from the draft also deserve honest evaluation in this context. Davis Igbinosun, the second-round pick, has been one of the more positively discussed players from the Bills draft class among people who have been watching him work. He has the athletic profile to be a starting caliber corner in this league. And the minicamp reports have him competing hard and showing genuine ability to cover in one-on-one situations. Toriano Pride Jr., the 7th-round pick, also turned heads in minicamp by shutting down Keon Coleman during one particular drill sequence, which is the kind of play that gets scouts excited about a late-round selection's potential to contribute immediately on special teams and develop into a real defensive option over time. But here is the honest reality. A second-round cornerback who has never played an NFL regular season game and a seventh-round cornerback who has also never played an NFL regular season game, combined with a group of veterans who are still establishing their roles in a new defensive scheme, does not represent the kind of experienced depth that a team with genuine Super Bowl ambitions in the current year should be operating with. At cornerback, White is the answer to that concern. He fills the veteran leadership gap, he brings the scheme knowledge, and he has demonstrated he can still play at an NFL starting level. The deal gets done before training camp if Beane is being appropriately aggressive about addressing the strong void. Now let us talk about the offensive conversation that has been generating real buzz among people who cover this team. Because the Alvin Kamara possibility is one of those situations where the football logic and the real-world complications are both compelling enough to deserve serious examination. Fox Sports analyst Greg Oman specifically mentioned Buffalo as one of the most logical potential destinations if the New Orleans Saints decide to move on from Kamara. And the detail that makes this conversation more credible than most trade rumors is the specific coaching connection that exists. Pete Carmichael, the current Bills offensive coordinator who will be calling the plays for Josh Allen this season, spent nearly 2 decades with the Saints organization, including 14 years leading their offense. He worked directly with Kamara for years. He knows exactly what Kamara can do, what makes him special, how to deploy him most effectively, and what kind of situation brings out his absolute best football. That is not a trivial connection. That is the kind of insider knowledge that separates a calculated acquisition from a swing in the dark. The football case for Kamara alongside James Cook is genuinely exciting to think about. Cook led the NFL in rushing yards last season at over 1,600 yards and demonstrated that he is one of the most complete backs in the league when operating at his best. But Cook's limitations as a pure receiver out of the backfield and as a safety valve option on third downs and pressure situations have been documented. Kamara is the exact complementary piece that addresses those limitations. He is one of the most dangerous pass-catching backs in the history of the position. He can be used in motion, from the slot, in the flat, on wheel routes, anywhere the offense wants to put him in space against a linebacker or a nickel corner. His basketball background shows in the way he processes defensive alignments and finds openings in coverage. Having Carmichael calling plays for Josh Allen with both Cook and Kamara in the backfield simultaneously would create matchup problems that no defense in the AFC has the personnel to solve. The obstacle is Kamara's stated preference and the Saints' own reluctance to move him without serious compensation. Kamara has publicly said multiple times that he wants to finish his career in New Orleans. He has even suggested in a light-hearted way that he might retire rather than accept a trade to a team he does not want to play for. That is not a throwaway comment from a player who has earned the right to have feelings about his situation. But football is also a business, and if the Saints' cap situation reaches a breaking point and they need to move Kamara's contract to create space, the conversation changes. The Bills would need to offer the kind of compensation that makes sense for New Orleans to facilitate a trade. And they would need to close the deal quickly enough that Kamara sees Buffalo as a genuine championship opportunity rather than an inconvenience. Neither of those things is impossible. Both of them are difficult. The broader window conversation is the one that should provide genuine comfort to Bills Mafia, regardless of how the individual roster decisions unfold. Bleacher Report's Brad Gagnon conducted a comprehensive analysis of competitive windows for all 32 NFL teams, projecting how many realistic years each franchise has to compete for a championship with their current organizational infrastructure. The Buffalo Bills received one of the most optimistic projections in the entire league, with Gagnon estimating 4 to 6 more years of genuine Super Bowl contention. And the reason behind that projection is exactly what every Bills fan already knows in their gut. Josh Allen. As long as Allen is healthy, playing at his current level, and under 35 years old, this franchise has a legitimate claim to being one of the best teams in the AFC every single season. The numbers behind that statement are overwhelming. Since 2019, the Bills have won more than 10 games in every season. Allen is the consensus best player in professional football right now. He has led multiple division title runs. He has delivered moments of individual brilliance that rival anything any quarterback has done in the current era of the sport. The path to the Hall of Fame, which once seemed like a stretch for a player who struggled with accuracy in his first 2 seasons, is now essentially a certainty barring catastrophic health circumstances. Allen is the foundation on which everything else gets built, and as long as that foundation is in place, the construction project of assembling a championship roster around him continues. Joe Brady coming in as the new head coach represents a genuine philosophical shift for this offense and this organization. Brady's history as an offensive innovator, most recently at LSU, where he helped engineer one of the greatest single seasons any college offense has ever produced, and his familiarity with multiple players on this roster, including his history with Justin Jefferson and Baton Rouge, gives the Bills' offense a creative dimension it has not had under previous coaching structures. The concern about a first-time head coach navigating the complexity of running an NFL franchise in a market with championship-level expectations is legitimate. But Brady has been preparing for this moment for years, and his background suggests a coach who processes information quickly, adapts his scheme to the available personnel, and builds genuine trust with his quarterback from the very first conversation. The defensive side of the ball under Babbich's new 3-4 scheme is the area of greatest uncertainty heading into training camp. The personnel fit questions are real. Deon Walker at nose tackle is legitimately exciting. The edge-rushing tandem of Gregory Rousseau and Bradley Chubb gives the unit veteran pass rush capability on the outside. TJ Sanders and Ed Oliver provide interior depth. But the transition to a new scheme always creates adjustment challenges, and whether the Bills' defensive personnel are well-suited to what Babbich wants to run will be one of the defining storylines of training camp and the first several weeks of the regular season. Cole Bishop's health remains the single most important question on the defensive side of the ball. When Bishop is healthy and operating at his best, this secondary functions at an elite level. When he is absent, the entire group is exposed. The knee scope he had this offseason and his absence from all spring practices has created genuine anxiety about his availability for Week 1. But Bishop himself has said emphatically that he will be ready for training camp, and his track record of being underestimated in the offseason and then delivering when the real games start should give the faithful at least measured optimism. The big picture for the 2026 Buffalo Bills is of a franchise that is in transition without being in crisis. That is retooling without abandoning its championship aspirations, and that has the single most important asset any franchise can have at the quarterback position. Josh Allen is going to play at an elite level this season. The offense, when fully healthy and operating with the weapons now assembled, is capable of scoring 30 or more points against any defense in the AFC. The defense, under a new coordinator with a new scheme and a group of young players taking on expanded roles, has the potential to be significantly better than it was last year if the right veteran pieces get added around the developing core. Tre'Davious White solves the cornerback depth problem cleanly and efficiently. Alvin Kamara, if the Saints make him available and the price is right, transforms this offense into something genuinely historic. And Josh Allen, entering his prime years with a new head coach and a new offensive system designed specifically around his strengths, has every tool available to him to finally take this franchise through the door it has been knocking on for half a decade. Bills Mafia, let us hear the full range of your opinions right now. Do you bring Tre'Davious White back immediately given the Dorian Strong news, or is it time to trust the young cornerbacks to develop under fire? Would you make a serious push for Alvin Kamara, or does the risk attached to his contract and his stated desire to stay in New Orleans make that move too complicated to pursue? And honestly, how many more years do you believe this Super Bowl window stays open with Josh Allen under center? Drop everything you have got in the comments section, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel because training camp opens in less than 6 weeks, and when it does, we are going to be right here every single day. Let's go Buffalo!